Sergeant Kemmling, 0341 with Victor 18 Weapons Company. Yes, I was with 81 second section on the Carter Hall. It's our smallest boat on the MU. While we were on deployment, because since we were on the small boat, we got to port a little more often. So got to do a training op in Portugal. We stopped in the UK for some live out, and then after that it was Greece, and then to CENTCOM. So while we were there, we did a little bit of cross training, but mostly it was kind of a show of like, this is our equipment, this is their equipment, this is how we kind of do our things, this is how we do our things, and then we trade some patches, kind of bro out a little bit, and just kind of hang out with them a little bit. The thing for me was you really just enjoyed the training, because we were still kind of on a COVID MU there, so it was like any excuse to get off the boat and kind of just feel like you were out and had a little bit of freedom was awesome. Just felt great. So initially it's kind of starts as a discipline thing. Just have to be a little more disciplined, have your mask on, bringing towels to the gym, just kind of adhering to rules that people don't necessarily want to follow, but we do it because that's what we do. In terms of like training and things like that, made it very difficult, because a lot of the countries that we wanted to train with, a lot of the things I think that we wanted to have planned were kind of hindered a little bit by the fact that we were going through a global pandemic at the time. Yes, pretty much everything we do livo-wise would be like they call it like a beer on the pier. So we'd still have masks on. We'd be just drinking beers in the equivalent of the parking lot of the ship. Yes, we got, so our second section got moved to Kuwait. The other 81 section was on trap on the USS Iwo Jima. So we got moved, and we were just kind of hanging out there. We weren't sure if we were doing anything, but it seemed to us like that was where we were going to fly from to go home in a couple weeks. Food-wise, moving from the ship to there, the chow hall was blessing. It was beautiful. Gym was fantastic, and then also it was like 100. It was well over 100 degrees every day, so it was like a very fantastic place to acclimate to any type of like Middle Eastern training that we were going to do. We made sure that we were actively doing a lot of physical stuff during the days, stay sharp while we were there. Nothing related to country. Everything we did on that MU was strictly mortar related. So we were all the time getting ready to do mortar stuff, mortar things. Even when we first started hearing mentions of Afghanistan, when we got told about HKIA, that it was like a potential place for a NEO or something like that, they actually brought in the squad leaders, and we were looking at maps saying what would be the best place to set up mortars, which we didn't do at all while we were there. We did bring them. We took them out of the Connex box, and they stayed in the crate the whole time we were there. So the thing to remember about us was that we only have one section down there. So our second section was plussed up, probably between 30, 40 dudes. And so we weren't necessarily large enough to hold down a whole gate or hold down any type of area. So we would fill in where necessary. We were kind of like, wherever there was some kind of task that needed to be completed, we'd do that task. About 2 days after Alpha Company, Charlie Company, I don't know if Bravo was on the ground yet, we showed up about 2 days later. So we had seen on the internet, actually, while we were waiting for the plane, that the airline was the airport was getting rushed, the tarmac was getting rushed. So we're up in the air, we're getting ready to land, and the airplane had no comms with the ground. So all we have is what we know, is that there's something, we think it's crazy down there, we think it's nuts, and we land on the ground and we come out. Immediately we have it set. We're going to set a 360, mags loaded, condition 1, ready to go. We step off that plane, and it was just calm, just cool night air, beautiful city lights, and then just this looming mountain off towards the distance. And it was almost like expecting chaos, but just stepping into almost like something that was just so quiet. We arrived on August 17th, probably right around 2 a.m. And we had been sitting at the airport. I forget the name of the base. I think it might I don't remember what it is, but we're sitting at the base where they had the airport, And the whole time we were there, we're receiving, text messages from our buddies on the ground in Alpha and in Charlie. And they were like, yo, you guys got to get over here. Like, we need more people here. This is nuts. So we're sitting there, and it's kind of like a big mental, like, strain sitting there. You're like, I'm missing it. And then being in the Marine Corps, you're kind of used to hearing about things like, oh, it's coming. And I was pretty certain that we were gonna miss like what was happening there. But then we got our plane, and all was good. Immediately upon waking up, we sent probably about a quarter of our guys over to do bag checks for Northgate. At the time, Northgate was not really open yet. They were letting in like very, very small amounts of people. And that was like my first interaction with any Afghan people, was doing the bag checks there. And it was kind of weird because you could hear the things over there. You kind of hear the thrashing at the gate at that time. Nothing crazy. And then these groups of people, things seemed composed. Things seemed pretty nice at first. The Afghan people, they looked really nice and had like a good interaction. So what I thought was how I thought it was going to go was not how it ended up. So immediately after bag checks, we went back for a quick break, and then we got sent almost like on a QRF to Northgate. So we got full kit. We ran out there, and it was about nighttime, early night, and once again, all was calm. Everybody was ready to go. We had everything there, and they were saying, hey, come break of dawn, probably around like 4 or 5 in the morning. This gate's getting opened, and we're going to make this happen. So from there, we made these giant lines. We had one go to like a bag check area, one to like a document check area, and then they had another line going to where I worked, which we called the kick out gate, where we would kick out people who didn't have correct identification, passports, things like that. So that was my first experience on the gate, was working at the kick out gate. I was probably on there for about 36 hours, and that's when things started getting pretty hectic. So I don't know why, but I thought, hey, it's just like any other day. They come in, they don't have the papers, they're gonna be cool with getting kicked out. And first people that came through, they let them through. My buddy Tyler Cavey, he was the guy that was going like ushering them with a smile on his face. And so he leads the family, and I think they still thought they were going to America. So it was a woman, her baby, the dad, a couple kids, and we said, all right, like, you're out. I'm sorry, you don't have the right identification. And they started breaking down, hysterically crying. And the woman took the barrel of my gun, put it in her mouth, and she said, kill me here. Rather die from you than the Taliban. And then the same thing, tried to move it over to her baby's head, and then said the same thing. So we had to kick them out, and then that's when I knew what we were in for there. That this was not like going to be orderly, that it was not going to be good, and right then and there, I kind of knew that the moral and ethical implications of what we were doing was going to be on these guys. From what I could see, anything was better than that. We heard the stories the people were telling us. I mean, being the guy. Being the group of guys, we kind of chose a specific crew for that job. So it was all corporals and kind of lance corporals that were seasoned there, and a couple sergeants who we really trusted. It was 81s, and then we were combined there with Bravo machine guns. And every instance every person that was getting kicked out, it's life and death for them. So nearly every incident, like every instance of what was happening there was like an extremely sad one like that. So we probably, just in those 36 hours alone, probably removed well over 5,000 people right through that gate. So upon that initial opening and funneling into the kick out, I don't know how it happened, but there was a couple NDs that had gone off. And not from our guys, not from Marines, but there was some NDs came out. So that was the first time I seen a guy with a gunshot wound. He came in, he took a 7.62 through the shin, and I was pretty taken back by how much damage something like that would do. So they, our Doc McJolton, threw a tourniquet on him, and he was a paramedic before he came in. So with like quick action, he asked one of the German medics, he's like, do you have any type of painkiller or anything like that? And gave him a vial of ketamine. They blasted him with the ketamine. He was feeling good. And then he didn't have the right papers, so we had to take him out the gate. And yeah, that was the last we saw of him. Yeah, we realized he didn't have the correct stuff, so they said it's not for us to do. The interesting part about that was the first day it changed in time. Like everything there is a super dynamic scenario. The first day was like, you have an American passport, that's it. You have like, or if you're some kind of partner nation, you have that passport, you're coming in. If you don't have that, you're out. Like this NEO is not for you. And that changed the second day. Then it was like, okay, if you have this filled out or something from the embassy, you're allowed in. Day 3, it's like, if you have even like barely anything, you're let in. And I don't know if they ever did, but it seemed by the end, they were letting in pretty much any family they could, which was also morally kind of confusing, because you think about like the 5,000 people you put out on the first day, and it's like, well, plenty of those people had papers, but that day was passports. So they didn't get in that day. I think was the dynamic part of it was that I can only imagine that things seemed like they were going to move a little bit more smoothly when we got there. I think by all means, I know you guys asked earlier, one of the questions was like what knowledge did you have about Afghanistan before you went? It was in the briefs we got. You saw this this map with red on the sides, and it's like all the way in the west of Afghanistan. That's where the Taliban are pushing. And you're like, oh, well, you still got a whole country before they get there. And it's like 3 months later, it's like there's just everything's red in the country, and there's a small circle around the airport. And you're like, oh, well, okay, like that happened way quicker than I thought it would. And I think the same thing happened there. I mean, within a day or two of getting there, the Taliban had full control of the city. And I think it's just kind of under the assumption that like we really need to save these people. We need to get them out of harm's way. For us, I mean, on the gates, things stayed pretty much the same, because you can, now it's just, this guy has a correct paper, we'll bring him in. Security was always high, and we were always like, ready for threats out there. We had a good posture the whole time. The difference in like security posturing came once we got moved to the terminal. I was leading a group of guys who were running Seek systems. For anybody that's not like familiar with the Seek system, it's a biometric scanner. And so it started out, every single person that comes through that terminal is getting Seek systemed. So thumbprint, eyes, enter in their data via their IDs. And if anyone pops up as a, ex-Taliban, ex-ISIS, or for whatever reason they're logged in that Seek database as someone bad to go, then we get rid of them. Luckily, we didn't have any pops for people that were like, bad people. We did have like a couple weird high-value guys come through. We scanned them, and it's like, this guy's a 4-star Iraqi general. And you're just like, huh, that's kind of weird. How'd you end up here? But, that it's like, he was the guy I scanned was an Iraqi general, and he's showing me a book of him shaking George Bush's hand and stuff like that. And I'm like, hey man, that's pretty cool. I guess you're good to go, brother. But then day 2, or not even day 2, probably about 10 hours later, they're saying, hey guys, this is going too slow. You're only seeking military-aged males, or all males. Started all males. So now we're doing all males. A few hours after that, now you're doing only military-aged males. Then it's anybody who looks suspicious. And then 0, we just stopped using the Seek systems unless the CID guys came through and they're like, hey, I need you to come get this guy. We found like maps with the grids on them of all our positions. We found his cell phone with him posing with ISIS pictures, or this guy's pretending to be part of a person's family. They just came and told on him. Then we'd go seek that guy, but that was about it. They looked like they were running pretty independently, and it seemed like they were doing a really good job because they'd be like walking through crowds, talking with people. Suddenly they'd just pick out guys quick, and they'd be like, search his backpack. And I mean, it's kind of humbling where it's like you've had these guys go through bag checks, like you've had them go through all these scenarios. They get in. You have a guy that's at the terminal. I mean, 20 meters from the terminal, we're opening up his backpack, and he's got a legitimate map with grids circled of your exact positions. So the fact that they were able to just, pick these guys out with like combat hunter tactics was like pretty impressive. Question them. They'd question them on the spot. I think it was like for the sake of time. It's not like they were holding these guys. So it was like, all right, clearly like this guy's like high suspect. We don't like what he's, coming in here with. So they just kick him out right after. At the gates, threat-wise, like immediate threats, none. Like it wasn't like, or at least while I was there, I wasn't taking any fire or anything like that. But I did have a radio on me because I was leading a group of guys, and it was like almost like a systemic overload because every second that radio is going off. And so it's not like, you do like a lot of scenario-based training, and you're like, okay, this is like the scenario I'm given. You were getting 10 scenarios a minute. So I have the radio, I'm listening to it. It's like we're out there, we're actively doing riot control. Civilians are throwing backpacks at you, throwing luggage at you to fight back with you. And then on the radio, it's going, Northgate, be advised, you have person-borne IED. There's a suspected person-borne IED. Be cognizant that it's out there. Be ready for it. It's like, all right, every person here is capable of being that IED. Now, all right, so you kind of just like, all right, I guess that one's out the window because every person here has a bag. Every person here is throwing bags. There's bags all over the ground. There is thousands of people that are just leaving trash everywhere. So everything you've been taught in an IED lane is out the window. So that's out, all right? So scratch that. Guess we won't worry about that one. Then it says, Northgate, be advised. We have, reason to believe that there's possible vehicle-borne IEDs coming your way. You're sitting on a gate where it's a wire, and then you have a 20 Marine line, and then a two-way highway, a two-way main highway. Every car in Afghanistan sags, has exposed wires, has a military-age male that's looking at you weird in it. So that one's out the window. So you're like, all right, what else is weird? What can I pick out? 2-story buildings in front of you, people recording you on the top, and at the same time you have a Taliban show of force parade rolling through. So it's like your immediate threats, everything. Every single thing's a threat. And that's not even counting in the point that you have thousands of meters of elevated terrain to your north. I mean, as a mortarman, I was looking at where we were at, and I was like, that'd be a sweet spot, But it was stimulus overload. It was like almost a beautiful thing. I like to tell my like junior Marines about it now, is that like, you can train for it, you can think for it, but once you get there, there's like, you really can't train for that amount of stimulus. You just got to really train yourself to be cool and feel it. And from there, we're lucky nothing happened. But that whole time, you just kind of came to grips with the fact that everything in your immediate vicinity is capable of killing you. And I think once you just kind of accept that you're dead, if you're dead, you're good. And that's how it worked for me, at least. So when we were immediately there, we were shoulder to shoulder. So when they popped that gate open, when they opened it up, it was 10 Marines from Weapons Company, 10 Marines from Bravo Company. And we went out there and we pushed to make a cordon. And we were shoulder to shoulder. The people might as well have been one mass. It was just a sea of moving parts, screaming, crying, scratching, pushing. And it was an insane experience because you stepped out of that gate. It was like pretty much peaceful calm, and you walked out and it was just pure unbridled chaos. And you think that like you like to believe that like the I guess like human behavior, human spirit, that people are going to do the right thing. And you like to believe like, oh, maybe they'd let all the women and children go first, or maybe they'd make it, I understand pushing, but like, maybe they'd make it easy on each other to get through. And no, it was every human for himself out there, pushing each other, stomping on each other, trampling each other, and they had no regard for each other. And I don't blame them for it, but it was sad. It was sad to see. So when I was working the gate, it was more of like, you have 20, 30 guys out there. I was watching for my guys. I had about 8 or 9 guys with me, and I'm looking for them. I'm looking for their immediate safety. But then on my left flank, I also have Bravo Company, and most of those guys are my best friends because I've just been on a boat with them for the last 4 or 5 months. So we're all out there. We're kind of in a hodgepodge. And at the same time, we have a lot of senior leadership out there too, and they are right there next to us. So for most of that riot control, things like that, there was times where I had my first sergeant next to me, First Sergeant Young, who's just an imposing man at about 6'9". So he was like, it really like, you have these guys next to you who have been there, who have done some really incredible things, and they're leading from the front. Your master sergeant out there. You had majors that I was just a corporal at the time, so I didn't know most of them, or your platoon commanders out there that are just driving it, keeping the boys in check. But for the most part, it's every man just giving his full effort to hold the line and like bring order to a situation that is entirely orderless. I guess the thing that sticks out to me the most is that like there's just at a certain point is like there's just no regard. Like there was no semblance of order or anything like that. It just came eventually with time. It was like just a consistent effort from Marines, Army, partner nation, just working continuously, just trying to cause order, putting out sea wire, anything they could do. And then eventually, like, it just kind of worked. So it's just like perseverance through action. And it just kind of worked out in the end of it. Everything that I did was at Northgate in the terminal. So our CAT section was up in up armored trucks the whole time, running around doing patrols on kind of the outer limits. But for us, I was on the ground the whole time. When we were doing those TDGs, it was probably a couple weeks before we went into Kuwait. We had, at the time, it was like it was just the squad leaders, pretty hush hush, and we set up the TDG in a room, and it was just a big strip map of like a Google image picture of HKIA. And so we're looking at it, okay, there's the northern part, there's the southern part. From the north, you kind of have that city access. From the south, you have all this open land. In the north, you also have the mountains. At the same time, we have a tarmac. So the way we were looking at it was, how can we set it up? How can we cover the most of the area of the airport, but at the same time deconflict with airplanes coming through, at the same time deconflict with firing overhead? And we probably sat for a few hours just going over it, just really like, how are we going to do this thing? How are we going to make this happen? And it was really cool because I felt for like the first time in my career, I was like, we're doing something. We're doing true mission planning for something that's coming. Luckily, we never had to set them up. We never had to use them or anything like that. But it's just a testament to how useful things like TDGs are. That's a really, really good way to kind of figure out how you're going to do something. As much as the small unit leadership is always a beautiful thing, guys really, taking care of their men. It was that was really the weeks of the platoon commander out there. You had guys who were brand new, first deployment, giving just massive amounts of responsibility. Like putting a first lieutenant or a second lieutenant in charge of a whole gate, a whole section of a gate. And it's like, guys really taking charge, taking ownership over something that, is really difficult morally, physically, and they just ran with it and did a fantastic job. Every person there was a rock star. It was unbelievable. Every person showed grit, unselfishness. It was beautiful. It was things like, when you're like, it's a good feeling when, you like to think you've like, mentored a dude, or you've taken a dude and you just watch them. You watch them from afar and you're like, that 18-year-old boy, that is an 18-year-old man now. And that's what you saw out there. At first, when I first went out there, I was a little bit worried, not because of their skill or anything like that, but once I saw the ethical dilemma that we were in, I was a little bit more worried in the sense that, like, all right, these are like young boys, like they're gonna have to take this home at some point. And it was like the absolute resilience and just work ethic. And like, I mean, even though the idea of war in the scenario is like horrific, like you spend your whole enlistment wishing, you're just praying that it's going to come, praying that you get the opportunity. And everyone was just super gracious that we just got to be there and do something good. Just so many things outside their given task. You had, this was engineers, absolute studs of the whole scenario there. Like you had them actively creating obstacles, creating barriers, ways to corral people, like 24 hours a day for the whole time they were there. You had, I mean, I know it's like a rear echelon dudes, or I don't know how they want us to phrase that, but like the whole terminal, the whole getting people on airplanes, the whole checking bag checks, checking the IDs, helping us move dudes through, running Seek systems, like they kept the whole thing going. Like the gates are good. The gates are good, like, you know, holding the line, getting people through, but there's a whole administrative process that was arguably even more convoluted than the whole gate scenario. So these guys were putting in work, and they were working 24 hours a day the whole time until that last man or that last civilian got out on a plane. So shout out to them, and also shout out to the State Department, because they were absolute rock stars too. As far as on the ground and working in there, how dynamic this situation was, how ever changing it was difficult to, like, you know, put in something you learned on like a range there, or like I guess a big one right off the bat is like that classic basic skills retention stuff, like how to handle a detainee, stress, things like that. Little things you might gaff off in the quad. Like, I mean, that whole scenario was like, that is stress. You know, you're searching dudes, you're doing all types of stuff there to you know, get them through, make sure they're safe. Most of my seniors had never been, but in a way, I think that's a good lesson to take for it. Was my seniors, a lot of them had 2 deployments back to back, Japan, Okinawa, and then Norway on like a B surf rotational. But the thing is, they never slacked. There's no difference between my seniors and my seniors who did those and the seniors that were around in other companies who had combat deployments. And in a lot of cases, I would say mine were worse. So they held me to such a high standard. They held us. They just ingrained grit from day one, and that's what it was. It's just grit, and that's what I got from them. Probably tell them this every day, so they probably hate hearing it. But if you're bad back here, you're bad there. There was this notion I had for a long time that everyone's going to rise to the occasion. You know, that the guy who's selfish in the rear, the guy who falls asleep on fire watch in the rear, the guy who doesn't hold the standard in the rear is going to go there, understand everything's for real now, and he's going to suddenly do the right thing. That was not true. Those PCCs, PCIs, things like that, you better believe that when I did PCC, PCIs on my guys in Afghanistan, there was dudes who didn't show up with ear pro, who didn't show up with a mag full or their water source. Like, we're going to be out there for what could potentially be an infinite amount of time. You didn't even fill up your Camelback. So all these things as a squad leader you think your guys are going to do when you get there, you still got to be a good squad leader. You still got to check them. You still got to hound them, even if they hate you for it. There's never going to be a time when your friendship should get in the way with what you're doing. And luckily for me, I had a bunch of great guys who always understood the difference between work and not work. So they never got on me for holding them to a high standard. I was in the terminal, corralling people through. So we're moving them through slowly, making sure they had the right documents on them, making sure that we were keeping the terminal orderly. Suddenly, all of the State Department people were like, hey, we immediately got to go. We immediately got to go and get to the bunker. I guess they had one or something like that. And so we're standing there like, that's kind of weird. Like, what's going on? What's this? Then you start hearing some whispers, some things like that. And then it was immediately like, I forget who, it was just like higher enlisted staff NCO came in and he was like, hey boys, something just happened. I'll get you the details in a second. We need to lock this place down. So I need you guys to set out security. I need you guys to make sure these people are like watched, ready to go. And that's what we did. So we set out security. We got stuff going. They called in like the team leaders real quick. And like, listen, bomb just went off at Abbey Gate over there. They're about to be rolling the casualties through over to here, over to the BAS that was located in the terminal. And so we were like, I can't even explain it. It was like the absolute intensity, the determination in the Marines' eyes when they knew that, like, one of our own has been touched, like, and we need to make sure everything is capable and everything is good for them to get those casualties through. So I remember I immediately pushed out. There was a whole bus full of people, and I went in and I just said, nobody's leaving this bus. Don't move. People were complaining. I was like, nobody's leaving this bus. Do not try to leave it. And so I posted a dude on there, and we had two guys on one of those Jersey barriers, looking out towards where we heard the casualties were going to roll from. There was like a random vehicle that came up and was just like parking really bad there. And we took that super personally. So we were like, move the vehicle, clear the way. And then we just saw multiple vehicles roll through very quickly, over to the BAS. And, from what I heard, they got treated there, whatever happened after that happened there. After I left the gate and I got to the terminal, the days started, blurring pretty hard. From what it seemed after that, I want to say we're only there for like 24, 36 hours after that happened. So once those gates got closed, it was just slow. It was like there was just like almost like an inherent calm over the whole airport. And or at least from where I was, I'm sure it was terrible in some other places over there, but where I was, there was just kind of insane calm as the last people are moving through and the last planes are leaving. And soon after that, all our stuff was packed up at all times, ready to go. So we just walked in, grabbed our stuff, and they were like, let's go wait on the tarmac for the plane. And we left. I think some guys, it seemed, were immediately kind of felt it a little bit. Of course, the command brought us in, talked to us, said, hey, stuff you need to do, stuff you need to feel out. Like, we have all the resources in the world for it. So for the most part for us, it seemed like it's one of those things where it's like, you're there and then you're not, and then you're back. Something that was different kind of with our 81 section was we did not take a rest day after we got back. So it was like we slept in that next morning, chilled out for the day, and then the day after that, PT started up in the mornings, which the guys hated because they saw some other dudes chilling out. But I think on the flip side at the time, you might ask me then, I might not have been a fan, but now I look back and I'm like, all right, like, I'm glad we were keeping our mind occupied in that way, moving, keeping it like, hey, happen, back to work, another day of business. And I think that was a good mindset to kind of bring. As far as back to the United States, I want to say the second I arrived, about 6 days later, I was at a wedding. It was weird. It was super weird. Just because I was sitting there all torqued up, and everyone else was just kind of, having a great time. And I was like, I don't know. I still had a lot of thoughts to wrestle with at the time. So it was kind of a weird scenario. It took me a long time to really figure out anything out about it. So it was definitely a long process. I guess the only way that I honor them is that wake up, take a look at your life, what you're doing. And, usually I'd probably probably say before this, I'd be like, there's no way you can be, grateful every day. Like everyone complains and things like that. But ever since I got back from there, ever since, you see people lose that, you see, people go through the mourning stages of something like that. You see the way families are affected. It's like, it is actually just disgusting if I'm not grateful every day for what I have and what what I've been given. And I get to wake up every day. I have, I have a platoon. I have family. I have a bed. I have food. What is there to complain about? Just take a look around and I guess just be thankful for what you have. And I guess tell everyone that's around you, you love them while you can. Don't let your pride get in the way of feeling better. If you need to go talk it out, if you need to pull one of the guys aside, a lot of us are still here. I know it's a little bit harder because a lot of guys EAS, but like even if you're out of the military, reach out to the dudes. Reach out. I know, like I have no problem saying it was difficult for me for a while. So if it's difficult for you, there's no reason you gotta be alone with it. That'd be it.